This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ann Marked. I'm the project manager for East West Anodyne Clinics. And I'm so excited to be hosting today. Reagan and Cade send their regards. They love and miss you all, and they will be back next week in action. But in the meantime, I'm so excited because I get to interview a dear friend of mine who I'm going to introduce shortly. But before we get into that, and our topic for today, I wanted to talk to you all about the Health Accelerator courses. So we started this at the beginning of this year. It's going so well. And how it's working is every single Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Reagan, our expert leader, he hosts a webinar on Zoom. It is free for everyone to join, so please invite your friends and family. We're teaching one transformative healthy habit every single week so that you can learn more and more over time about your health. And I love this because I have a background in health coaching and there's just so much information to provide to people. It's like info overload. So we're just slowly helping you digest all of those things and help you get 1% better every single day. And we always assign you one very simple challenge each Wednesday. You implement for the next 7 days, and you're going to be 365% better as a human being after 2021. And we're not going to stop there. You're going to just keep going and keep getting better every single day. So I have loved it. We also have a Signal text channel, and I moderate that, and everyone's energy is amazing. They're so engaged. We get to see your faces because it's a meeting on Zoom, not a webinar. So we welcome everyone. I'm going to post the info here. That's our site where you can join for free with a link on there on Zoom. You can also learn more about it, ask questions, and I posted my email as well. So I really hope you start joining us every Wednesday at 4:30. But now I'm ready to transition and get into our talk today. So this is my dear friend, Freddie Kimmel, and he is a functional health coach, Reiki healer, certified personal trainer, gut health specialist, and a proud cancer survivor. He helps men and women eliminate brain fog, belly bloat, belly fat, and improves their gut health. And I am honored to speak with Freddie today and introduce him to you all because I met him many years ago. He is also a phenomenal performer, singer, actor, dancer. That's how we originally met. And then we reconnected in the health and wellness industry. And if there's one thing I know about Freddie, it's that he walks the talk. He is a true leader in the health and wellness industry. And he always is helping me improve too and introducing me to the latest and greatest biohacking technologies that I hadn't learned prior. So I'm excited for him to talk to you all today about that very topic. So Freddie, welcome and thank you for being on the podcast today.
What a treat to do this live stream.
I know, it's exciting.
And I'm sitting here in this very, very humbled moment, you know, as I'm prepping and getting my computer out and pulling up to my spot to have this beautiful spot. I'm right looking out over the Atlantic Ocean, right on the Jersey Shore, and I'm in this beautiful doctor's office. And as I'm pulling into the parking lot, I got about 10 minutes to set up. I get pulled over by a police officer. And of course, I start my day and immediately my cortisol starts rising. And I was like, this is a great spot to practice. I'm releasing things that are beyond my control, and I'm going to breathe. So it was great, and I didn't get a ticket. So it was already starting out on a big win today. Anytime you can talk yourself out of a ticket, I find is like, man, that is a life skill that's just, well, that's one to put in the record books.
That is very impressive. I tried to do that once. I even cried. I brought out the actress in me. Didn't work, but that's okay. It was in Ohio.
Well, I told him what I was going to be doing. I just laid in. I said,
yeah.
I'm about to address a very important audience on health and wellness and transformational technology and all the things, and I've got to be there. And he was like, really? I was like, really? So
that's wonderful. So someone just mentioned that there's an echo to my voice. So please let me know in the chat if you're hearing that from me. It might be because I'm in a very big room, and I also am right next to a very busy street. So I can always mute myself in between asking questions. Fixed it. Yay. Okay, good. So to start, Freddie, you have such an incredible story and health journey that I would love to just begin with you telling our audience about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I've gotten really good at really niching this down into the important parts. So like you, Ann, I was in New York City pursuing the dreams of being on Broadway, a Broadway performer. And I had moved this city also around a very tumultuous time in our history. I was there right the month after 9/11. So as I'm searching for a job, I'm trying to break into this industry that has a 99% unemployment rate. I'm moving around the city that had just been, the towers had been attacked. And I would come home after looking for a job, not being an overly emotional person. And I would literally lay on the on the shower floor, and I would just like cry from being out and absorbing all the energy as an empath of the city. And I did that for a couple months. And one morning I just woke up with this like incredible joint pain throughout my body. Knees, hands, very much like presenting as rheumatoid arthritis. In retrospect, probably Lyme disease. After I had spent my childhood in upstate New York and a summer in New Hampshire. And basically at 23, I was very much Superman. I was not really going to go explore this. I decided to just eat Advil and indomethacin painkillers for a long time until eventually, cut to 4 years later, I started to have pain in my abdomen and my belly. And again, I sort of half investigated, but more or less ignored the symptoms until I found myself in an emergency room where a doctor told me that I had metastatic cancer and that it had spread to different areas of my body. And it was this moment of, oh my God, it was like that. It was like that moment where you're in a party in summer and there's all this noise all around and someone pushes you into the pool and like everything was silent in the room. And I remember that moment. I called my parents, I got on a plane, I went home and just started this crazy treatment. I did as much chemotherapy as you can do. I did this surgery called a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection where they cut from belly to sternum and they take out all your organs and they cut out the lymph nodes and they put everything back in. And this was about 12 days with, you have all the NG tubes down your nose and you're not eating, no food, no nothing. I'm watching life come in and out of the room. And in this experience, I was declared cancer-free at the end of these 12 days and basically this intensive care type situation, and started to rebuild my life. You'd think after you go through all that stuff that it would just be like, great, I'm a cancer survivor. I can call up Oprah. I can get on the show. I can write my book. I can kind of roll back into life and just look, I did it. And that wasn't my experience. My experience was that after I went through cancer, I started to have these situations where, because of the surgery, my intestine would like twist from abdominal adhesions. And I would find myself on the floor or rush to the emergency room or rush to the ER, and they'd take out a foot of small bowel. And this went on for the next 5 or 6 years. So you can imagine my poor little nervous system that was just so fried and so wired from going through all this. I just couldn't get a break. In this time, developed chronic fatigue syndrome. I started to look at some investigative practices in the body, looking at heavy metal, toxicity, mold, found Lyme disease, you name it, I found it. The whole bioterrain, I often think about the body as like this fish tank, and you can have really clear water and sunlight and oxygen and everything's happy, or we can get this cloudy, muddy, fungusy tank. And that was my body. And there were so many reasons for that in retrospect, but I just started, I had a moment where I was walking down, I think it was 52nd Street, and there's a little monastery there, and there was a statue of the Virgin Mary, and there's like snow falling down, hitting it with this perfect light. I was like, oh my God, if I ever get my life back, if I ever maintain a sense of normalcy, I am going to be a lighthouse for other people. And it was literally like that moment where I just started to do all the things, right? I became so passionate about wanting to get better, and I say my list of things that I tried, because conventional medicine was like, well, just take Oxycontin, just like oxycodone, and just do these pain medications, and we can keep having you in for surgery every 2 years. We can keep snipping scar tissue. And, they really didn't have a lot of solutions for me. And even I got to the point where I would walk into a doctor's office, a gastroenterologist, and they said, I'm not touching you. You're a liability, not with a 10-foot pole. How many surgeries have you had already? So it was very, very frustrating, but it was also like the greatest teacher. New levels of awareness that I'm just going to have to pick up and start reading books. So all the courses, all the schools, all the books, thousands of hours of podcasts, and started to try these things on the fringe, like ozone therapy, stem cell injections, PRP, EMDR for trauma, pulsed electromagnetic field, bioresonance, frequency delivery, you name it. And I started to put together, an upgrade your biology course, if you will, just for my own body, and really started to see some awesome improvement. I went from not being able to go to the bathroom to being very, very regular. I went from taking a trip from Washington Heights down to Midtown and like turning around many times because I was so tired, to being able to be up all day and be involved in 5 or 6 different businesses and do a podcast and coach people. I went from being in terrible chronic pain, like a 10 out of 10, to most days it's like a 1 or a 2. I don't take drugs for pain. I don't take medications for pain or to go to the bathroom. None of these. I've done it all through food. I've done it all through technology. I've done it all through mindset. And I continue to learn more and more and more. I am a person who's addicted to lifelong learning. I love learning about the body. I love learning through this experience. Why have I been given all these awesome challenges to learn from, and how have I evolved as a human being, being on the other side of some of them, and just being, again, so grateful and so humbled of how lucky I am just to be here. Just a lot of it's luck. Let's face it. There's so many times when I just could have straight up died. Many of these surgeries, I remember many, many moments. And so now today I work with that trauma. In retrospect, I look back and I kind of unpack some of those things. And that whole experience of me going through all that illness and all the surgeries and all the comeuppance, like the hero's journey, that is my superpower. So when I speak to people and when I work to people, I can speak from experience. There's a lot of, there's so much information out there. I found at the end of the day, we're drowning in information. What we're looking for is like knowledge and practice. I want to see somebody that's actually done it. And that's what I found. There's not a lot of even doctors and therapists out there that were incredibly helpful to me. I can count the good ones on my left hand, really and truly, that just, again, humility, empathy, humbled that they might not know, but they have ideas and principles, dropping dogma. And again, it's just been such an awesome learning experience. I'm so excited to be able to sit here with you and tell you this story with good energy and being really, and I'm in like an incredible state of joy. So I just like every day I'm beyond humbled to be here. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. That was pretty quick, wasn't it?
I love that. No, that's perfect. You like had such an incredible hero's journey, and I love that you said it that way. And I'm really curious to know from all of your experiences and your wealth of knowledge and the certificates you've acquired. I mean, you're a trainer, you're a functional coach. You also are very spiritual. You're a Reiki instructor. You've done EFT with me. That's emotional freedom tapping for those of you who don't know. So out of all of these incredible modalities you've experienced and or been certified in, what have you found to be, let's say, like top 3 things that you think have been most instrumental in getting you to where you are today?
Yeah. So the big one for me is mindset. If I didn't say that I thought the emotional body, the spiritual body was 98% of it, I'd be lying. Because I from experience, in coaching so many people and seeing, there's a lot of people that have access to a lot of different modalities. It doesn't always mean they're successful in the endeavor to upgrade the biology, upgrade your biological system. I found so much of it is mindset. And so with that, really having a guide in that realm. I have some awesome people in my corner that have just been rocks for me as far as reframing my experience and helping me learn how to frame how I'm going to enter into technology or how I'm going to bring in a supplement. I like the term, source God is in the supplement. It's all the power you put in it. I don't get frustrated by the placebo effect that we have this 30% boost by our belief system. I get really excited about that. It's like, wow, look at what my mind can do without anything. So I really work with that. Like, how can I empower and fill up my cup? So for me, the big things have been consistent, some type of a coach or therapy. And I could say things like EMDR, which is amazing for using eye movement and just some coaching to work through trauma and let that unravel. But I also think, I got to give a tip of the hat to my friends, Kathy Wheelahan and Laura, who run a program called Be Loved Now. And it uses the 12 guiding spiritual principles to evolve like the body, the soul, the mind, the heart. And that's been really amazing for me. So the emotional component, it's huge. It's like everything. And, the other big ones for me, I talk about this a lot. And I work with a company called Coil. So in this journey, when I had just done surgery number 5, I had bought a home with floor to ceiling toxic mold, and I still was struggling with horrible symptoms of Lyme, probably only eating about 13 or 14 foods because of oversensitivity to all these stimuli in my gut. My gut was a mess, as you can imagine, through all the things I mentioned. Well, Freddie, you had trauma and scar tissue and you lived in New York City. And what's not to be a stressor? So I saw this webinar on a system called Coil, which is pulse electromagnetic field and frequency. And I listened to the founder's talk and I bought one. I didn't try it. I didn't do much reading on it. It was so resonant with me, and I got such an internal yes that I literally pulled up my credit card and I bought one. And I'm going to say within 4 months, my energy, boom, through the roof. My positivity was exponential, and I was able to let go of I wasn't worried anymore. Do you know chronic illness can really leave you that? It's like, what's next? What's coming down the pipe? What's it going to be with this? What about when these supplements stop working for me? What if I can't afford ozone treatments? What if I can't afford an IV for nutraceuticals? The worry was gone because all of a sudden I saw, using magnetics and bioresonance, that I had this amazing ability to fill up my cup energetically. And so what that did for me is it really changed my awareness around what's possible. The body is a magnetic body. We generate a magnetic field. That's why magnetic therapy works with the body. There's awesome people out there in the field like Dr. Pollack and Bryant Myers. And there's even people way back that studied this in the 30s and the 40s. Otto Warburg studied transmembrane potential and the voltage of a cell. Like a cell has a charge, with positive ions on the outside, negative on the inside. That exchange allows these nutrients to flow in and out of the cell. It's really this flow of electrons. And if we go into a quantum physics, the table and me and the hat, they're all different oscillating patterns. That's what makes up their density. Everything's sound, even the space between me and you, Anne, it's just a perception. So we talk about this all the time, that we're all one. And that's provable by science. So we can see this with Reiki. And I had tapped on that, right? I had seen that there were practitioners out there doing distance healing and actually changing the heart rate variability of people 3,000 miles away. It's like, how is that possible? And so when we start to bring in this idea of working with frequency, we're rearranging the vibrational patterns in the body. Have you ever seen where they put the sand on a vibrational plate and they start to turn up the frequency, and it will arrange the sand into these perfect geometric patterns? And eventually the pattern gets to the same design as a stained glass window in the Sistine Chapel before this science was ever available. Like, people know we have an intuition that we tap into, right? Some of these things were in the Egyptian pyramids. They had frequency chambers where they would put someone's head in and give them certain solfeggios to bring them out of depression or work with different disease states, and people would get better. So it's a very old technology, but what Amp Coil's done is combined it with magnetic fields that envelop the body in magnetism and sound. And so we can work with the body this way. So that's, listen, I'm very passionate about it. I work with that company, and I've heard more success stories from that platform than I ever have. And believe me, I'm a connoisseur of technology. I consider myself a transformational technology expert. And part of what I like to do and I'm very passionate about is education, knowledge, and awareness around when you bring these things in, what's the right time and what's the right amount to spend on some of these interventions. I spent $26,000 a year for over 10 years. That's tax write-offs. That's not Amazon supplements. That's not some of these outside of the box functional medicine clinics. Sometimes I would walk out with a bill for $2,000 just one day, and that's a treatment. What does the treatment really do? It gives me a couple hours of energy, but does it teach my body anything to do with the dysfunction? And so I've been very passionate. How do you build this at home? How do we build this at home for ourselves? How do you make it affordable? How do you finance it? So, that's why I really like the idea. I'm like, I can have this in my home. I can work with my own energetic body 3 to 4 times a week. So it checked a lot of the boxes for me. The other thing that I really love is light. That has been a game changer for me. And I continue to see through new studies that are coming out that cells communicate through light, through biophotons and oscillating patterns. Like, we are a light body. I emit light as a human being. So this is something that can be measured with, fringe technology, BioWell, GDV photography, gas discharge visualization, but we can measure the energetic body, Kirlian photography, and if that's of your belief system or not, it's something that's measurable. And what I've seen to be really cool is when we apply light to the body in different spectrums, photobiomodulation, which Anne just threw in there, which is the fancy word. We can just say light therapy. The body increases its production of energy. The body's brainwaves move into a relaxed state. The body better heals wounds. We increase nitric oxide. We recover quicker after the gym. There's actually a huge study now working with Alzheimer's patients at breaking up the beta amyloid plaque using specific frequencies of red light, 10 hertz and 40 hertz. 2-year study, really positive initial results. So the fact that we can do this with, we get this cognitive dissonance for whatever reason. And I have so many theories about why we get sick, and we could do like an 8-hour podcast on it. It's really amazing to see that with light, with these natural signaling, these natural frequencies from the planet, that we can help the body move back into its natural state. And when I say this, let's just recap. So we have the emotional and spiritual, right? You have a guide, have a coach, whatever it is, because you're a really bad voyeur. You're not a great person to take a metric on how you're doing emotionally and spiritually. For me, that's why it's the human experience. So I look at that, I see this big, huge, I think of like a concert of people. We are doing this together. If you want to do it by yourself, that's lonely, that's sad, I don't think you're going to get very far. So to have someone as a coach or a mirror, just to hold it up, my friend Kathy, she goes, when I have a reaction, she's like, well, isn't that interesting that's being triggered in you? What is that? What's underneath that, and what's underneath that? What's the real emotion, not the fake emotion? So we can really I can get a really strong sense of where my true north is if I really understand me. So that's big. The pulse electromagnetic and the frequency, I think energy medicine is going to be the future. I really do. I'm so excited about it. There's so many cool things happening in the industry. It's free. It's free energy, right? It's not a pill. It's not a supplement. It's not cutting you open. I remember the old Star Trek movies I used to watch with my dad. There's a great scene in Star Trek 4 when Bones, they're walking down a hospital corridor and he brings out this tricorder and he just like fixes this guy's appendix. I think we'll be there at someday. I think we'll be there. And so I really believe in using sound and vibration and energy, because we can see how that changes in the body with our belief system through prayer. You can change the quality of the energetics of a powder, a protein powder. If you've ever seen Dr. Barry's work, this is measurable. You can change the power, the energetics coming off a protein powder with prayer, and they can measure that. I mean, that's all our intention. So I think my true power of healing, your true power, everybody that's watching this, is totally unrealized. I don't think we have a clue what we're capable of. I think we've been told that we always go outside of ourselves for answers. We go to the doctor, we look to the supplement. It's everywhere but in here. And this is the hardest work. And I understand it. It really is. Because some of that work is just, it's weighted in heartache to deal with trauma, to deal with the idea that we don't truly love ourselves. And I think a great little metric you can throw in is like, think about one of your friends going through one of the hardest situations you can imagine. And how would you show up for that person? What would you say? What would you do? Would there be a limit? Would there be a limit to what you'd help them with? Hell no. But there's definitely a limit to yourself. We can justify that it's too expensive, that we don't have time, that it's too hard, that maybe next week. You would never say that to your best friend. Never. So we've got to show up for ourselves. And I think that, again, that's in that mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, right? That just really, really honoring the heart and how beautiful you are, and you deserve healing. It's rare that I meet with someone and do a little, like we do a download like this, and that they say they deserve it. Not 100%. I don't think I've ever done. I don't think I've ever asked a person that question on an intake and said, "Are you 100% deserving of getting well?" It's always a pause. So that's very interesting to me. It's very interesting. So let's take the lid off that power, and then let's talk about technology and supplements and all the other good stuff, right? The lights. So we got the pulse electromagnetic field frequency, the spirituality, and then we got the lights on the other side. So it's very clear to me that what we've designed as a modern world is not so conducive to me feeling well. I live in a home with modern day building materials that the first time you get that drywall wet, it's going to grow mold. I'm surrounded by walls that are all wired with these dirty electricity that are putting off a non-native human frequency, 60 hertz through a wall. Do you know Tesla wanted to use 40 hertz in the wall, 40 or 50 hertz? He didn't want to use 60 hertz when they were talking about wiring the little initial electricity. And what's really profound is 60 hertz it's hurtful to the human bioenergetic field. So we're wired with all these, non-native frequencies. We have these like 2.5 gigahertz, which is way beyond the frequencies in the human body, that I'm sitting in these waves of Wi-Fi. If I try to log on to my tablet in my apartment in New York City, it's like, you can join 48 networks. Well, if my cells communicate with light and through bioresonance and through oscillating patterns, if they all communicate through vibration and sound, how hard is it for my internal voice to hear what's going on when organ systems are trying to talk to each other and I'm surrounded in this field of artificial frequency? I think there's some validity to that. I'm not saying go around wearing a tinfoil hat, but think about your life design. So, I'm also very aware if we look at our water quality, look up, a great site is ewg.org. You can put in your zip code and look up water. I've had many people get on and we look at that and they just want to get sick afterwards because there's 20 to 22 contaminants at 300, 200, 198 times the perceived limit of what is a good water quality. And we can often trace those chemicals right back into a toxicity sample in their tissue. So when it might not be the drinking water, it might be the shower water. So when I talk about light, yeah, like red lights are awesome. But for me, light, it's like, where are you spending your 24 hours a day? What's the environment? I'll give one more thing, and then I don't want to stop talking because I'm talking so much. I really view health as this relationship. It's an environment we want to create for the body and nurture and really make an invitation. My perfect example is if I were around like somebody, like a little, like a 9-year-old, he's having a temper tantrum and I'm yelling at him to calm down. That is the last thing he's going to do. He doesn't want to, don't think about the pink elephant, you know? However, if I were to put in some gluten-free goat cheese pizza and some sparkling water and put on his favorite Netflix show in the other room and invite him into a different state, he'd be like, yeah. So why don't we do that with our bodies? What if we were to make an invitation for health and wellness? What's that look like to you? You know, that to me, that's really exciting because all of a sudden when I've got the invitation, when I've set the scene for health and wellness, when I built that in my home, maybe my morning ritual is the mycotoxin-free coffee and 10 minutes in the red light and the foot bath and some journaling. Maybe it's scrubbing down with a salt scrub, and then I feel so invigorated. So I've reminded my body, I've entrained it to the fact that when you wake up in the morning, you get this like spa treatment every day for your body. And then you're going to do some emotional freedom tapping, and I'm going to work out any trauma, you know, and then I'm going to go for a walk in Central Park, and then I'm going to connect with, I have the opportunity to show up and work today. What a blessing to be able to work after being in a hospital bed. You know, what a blessing. And I get to do it with other people. You know, I find I contract and things get hard when I start thinking about, I'm the only one that can do this. Look how hard I'm working. I've got to get this done. If I don't get this done, I'm a failure, right? And it becomes all about me. I'm not sharing the experience with any of the team. I've got to like lay into my team, lay into my community. I think that's the big thing. You don't have to do it alone. And so, you know, again, just to recap with that, it's like, we're building this platform. We're building an invitation. It's never about like the one coach or the one technology. You know, I love these things and I see them to be incredibly beneficial, but it's really, you got to frame it with the right mindset. And then it's creating the whole platform, because that's what your body self-heals. It's auto-regulatory. Perfect example. I'm wearing this new thing. I'm working with this company called BioStrap. BioStrap has a metric on my phone, tracks HRV, nocturnal HRV. It has oxygenation of the tissue. It's got resting heart rate, respiratory rate, steps per day. And it gives me like a contracted, like little Venn diagram. And it shows me where I'm awesome and where I'm sucking. And you can't deny data like this, right? So when I look at them, like, man, my HRV keeps dropping, you know, for these specific reasons. So I think, you know, right away, I know it's not one thing. It's my life's design. And as a type A person, this is what I'm working through as a human being. I've got to really schedule time to like, just stop. I don't need to achieve anything to deserve love. I'm deserving of love just by being born. Remember, something loved you enough as the universe, as a universal being, just to say, here you go, here's 100 years. I really love you. That, you know, just wake up with that fact every day. Awesome. Someone gifted you life. So you've got that just to walk with and hold every day. Whenever you're feeling really low, it's like, wow, somebody loved you enough to give you life in the universe. How cool. How cool. And so you were born as that perfect little baby. You didn't have to validate yourself. You didn't have to make a beautiful piece of art. You didn't have to be the best vocalist or make $100,000 a year. You were just like this, you're like love and pooping and sadness and sleeping. Like that's your true state. And then we learn all these other things that kind of bring us back down and make us small, right? We kind of build in the parameters of like, oh, I don't have the body like everybody else. I don't speak like everybody else. My skin is a different color. I'm a different size. So we start to box it in. And I think healing for me has been breaking this glass ceiling and seeing what's possible. And it'll never be done. It'll never be done. You're never, I like, I could name all the things. Like, it's funny, cancer was really, really hard physically. And it was so profound for me. It was like, show up and do your chemo, show up and do the surgeries. You're going to die if you don't do it. I didn't have a lot of choice in the matter. And there's so much empathy for a cancer survivor or a cancer person going through cancer. Everybody's showing up. Everybody understands. Lyme disease, a lot less. You look normal from the outside, but the inside, you're the walking wounded. It's the chronic fatigue, the constipation, the joint pain, the brain fog, overwhelming. Mold, same thing, mold toxicity. People are like, you have mold, you can't just spray bleach in your home? No, I did do a $40,000 renovation and stripped my home down to the floors. And then I had to work, 3 years to get the mycotoxins out of my blood, which are what? They're just crushing the mitochondrial action in the cell. They're dropping your body's ability to make energy. So all these things come into play, right? Everything's had the abdominal adhesions, the scar tissue. I was just like, my intestines can't get food through. What do you do with that? There's very few people that know that struggle. So you've got to almost take each one of these individual lessons and just, you do what you can, and then you just start bringing in, you bring in community. You start opening yourself up to being humbled on your knees and saying, I really need help. So with that, I want to stop talking. Did you ask me a question, Ann?
This is so great, Freddie. I love it so much. Diane said, thank you for this show today, Ann. She's just loving it. It's great. And I couldn't agree more. I have so many different questions that are coming up and things that resonate with me. So I was thinking to myself, there's no greater coach or mentor than someone who's been through that trauma themselves, because you can really understand it on a whole different level than someone who is trying to help someone and has empathy for their situation, but doesn't fully understand what it's like to experience something like that. Yeah. And it made me think of, I haven't said this on here, but this happened like months ago, and I had anaphylactic shock for the first time in my life. Mm-hmm. And I had actually read a book on trauma prior to that, which I think that was a godsend, because it helped me understand that trauma isn't just like, wartime PTSD, being in a car accident, the things we think of initially with trauma. Trauma is whenever your body feels invaded and your sense of safety is just, it rocks your world and flips everything upside down. And suddenly you don't know, like you feel like you were invaded in a way. Mm-hmm. And I had no control in that moment over my body, like what it was doing. It was having a reaction. I had to go along for the ride. Thank God I had done like meditation and other things prior, because some deep, deep voice inside of me came up and was like, you're not going to die. It's not your time yet. Breathe through it. And I had enough time to make it to the EMTs to help me. And like, they ultimately saved my life. Yeah. So this happens though, and it rocked my world. And thank God a mentor who I'd already met years prior came back into my life. She found out that it had happened. She's been through traumas herself, through having an autoimmune disorder, as well as being in the hospital over like, just crazy things. And she was like, we're going to do Byron Katie's work, because that's what you need right now. And having read that trauma book, it said those first 3 months after trauma are critical. It's not to say you still need ongoing support, but that's to help reframe the mind so you're not suddenly becoming agoraphobic, because this happens and it's like everything's a threat, everything's going to hurt me. So I was just, I had read all the books on mindset and it made sense conceptually, but it wasn't until I was really doing that deeper work like you're talking about that it made me think, wow, like this is so transformative. How do we up level our mindset to meet those challenges, especially the things circumstantially that just happen that we can't control, but how are we going to respond to that? So a question I have for you is, as you're walking clients through this like knowledge base that you have, I'm looking at it like a target, where do you start where it's like, okay, first things first, we need to cover this. And then you sort of start to widen that target to include all these other wonderful modalities you're talking about. But is there an order you go in, or does it really depend on the client that you're working with?
It depends on the client. It's, everybody's so different. We all bring a different story. For me, health coaching is relatively simple. Really and truly, I've never been overwhelmed, even when I first started training like 12 years ago, and there's a lot of new information. And I'm not a doctor, I'm a coach. It's all education. I just teach people I'm like, be as passionate as you possibly can about being a citizen scientist. I heard that term last week. I was like, that's sort of what I am. So when I'm looking at this target, I think about like the levels of like priority. It's like how long, so I'll give you inputs of information. Food and nutrition. And how long can you go without food? Or anybody, this is a good one for yeah. This is a good one for the audience too. How long do you think the human body can go without food? Don't Google it.
No, I've read this before. I mean, I'm thinking like biblically, Jesus in the Bible, like 40 days, 40 nights, but I'm wondering, isn't it more like 21 days you can go without food, something like that?
I mean, you can go about 40. As long as you have water. I know people who've done medically supervised, there's stories of a guy that was extremely obese who did a medically supervised fast with his doctor. I think he did 365 days, believe it or not. Incredible. But the general is 43 days. So you can go 43 days without food. How long can you go without water?
I think only 3 days.
You can, maybe
a week.
You can go about a week to 12 days. It's possible. We get up there. And then how long can you go without air?
Oh my God. Well, it depends on how long you can hold your breath. But I know that as you're losing that breath, you're losing brain cells. I mean, you literally go brain dead if you don't get the oxygen that you need. So I would think like mere minutes.
Yeah, it's a short amount of time. Some divers can go 7. The deep divers can go 14 minutes, a crazy amount of time. And so there's our order of operations. We got 40 days without food, week and a half without water. I know these times I'm doing the long range, and we got like a couple minutes without air. So for me, like I always start with breath work. That's the priority. We're not going to live without it. And most people don't know how to breathe. And as a person with a singing background, to be able to open up this rib cage and really, really like, we have this thing called the incipient yawn, and Anne's a beautiful singer. If you haven't heard Anne sing, it's unbelievable voice, like just godsend. Do a yawn. Everybody do a yawn at home. If you maintain the inside of that mouth, right, inside that space, we got this amazing resonant cavity in there. And if we were to fill up our lungs at the same time, all of a sudden you're this beautiful instrument of sound. And if we work with that diaphragmatic synchronicity, we can really change the way we oxygenate tissue. So I always do a little around breath work that's going to help our heart rate variability. The idea that there's different times between each individual heartbeat, that better HRV score is going to show the balance between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system being able to throttle and brake. And you're going to move yourself into a state of self-healing. Next is like the water quality. Water without minerals is dead water. You're a magnetic being. You're an energetic body. You're a battery, and if you don't have good mineral balance, all that stuff I talked about, frequency and magnetics, it doesn't hold charge in the body. Our body is, you can do all the things you want. You can do all the breath work. It's not going to hold. And then, of course, food. Food has been over-farmed over the last 50 years. My buddy Wade Lightheart says, 50 peaches in 1950. You'd have to eat, for one peach in 1950, you'd have to eat 50 today to get the same nutrient profile. So our food just doesn't have the nutrients. So just a level of awareness around what we have as far as raw materials to fuel the body, that's a big one for me as far as clients. And then I personally, I'm starting to work with a team. If you can imagine, I'm very, very busy between doing a podcast and working for a beautiful company called Coil and consulting some other companies in the technology area. So I'm very, very busy, but with this team, we have like a 20-page intake form, and everybody's going to have different triggers. Some people are really triggered around money. Some it's the relationship. It's being completely unsupported by your partner, which I know a lot of people have experienced in this pandemic. You know, all of a sudden it's like the pandemic for me with a relationship, it's like a cracked sidewalk in January. If you pour a bunch of water into it and let it freeze, boom, you know, you're going to see the best and the worst of that other person. So that could be a limiting factor. So through this intake form, I kind of guide people where to go. A big one, you know, that I see come up a lot is the way our society is designed around achievement and our relationship to money, which I'm very, very increasingly passionate about, because I bet everybody's, maybe this has come up for you where we're listening to this, you know, Freddie, how did you afford all this stuff? How do you afford? Because I was a music theater actor, you know, a little bit of TV and film, but mostly music theater. And you'd be in an awesome show like Phantom of the Opera, you're making great money, but maybe you're unemployed for 6 months. So it was always feast and famine for me. While I was sick, I really had to get clear on my relationship with money, because that was a huge blockade in me trying any of this, any of it. I'm a firm believer in you invest what you can afford to lose, be comfortable what you can invest, and money is energy. Our relationship with energy, we allow it to flow into our lives or we block it. All it is an energetic exchange between, if I want to work with Ann, right? The money's just, the value is perceived on the paper that's like carbon and nitrogen. I made it up. I choose to give it a belief system that it has value. What really is, I want Ann's help as a coach. I want her service. So when I was sick, what I did was, and this is my little quick diatribe on how you work with this, is that I looked at what resources I had access to. I decided my 2-bedroom apartment in New York was a real luxury, and I cut it in half, and I set up a wall, and I started Airbnb when Airbnb was a new thing. Now I was struggling through a lot of this, but I always showed up for my guests. I hosted 425 people over the next 10 years. And from 2012 to 2018, I didn't pay rent. It was always covered. And I reinvested that money back into my health. And I loved hosting people because I like people. You know, people light me up. I like strangers, people from all over the world. And I remember people telling me how inconvenient they thought that was. And for me, I was like, I've got a way through. Oh my God, I'm gonna be able to do this. I can afford an amp coil. You know, I can afford to experiment with this doctor who wants to do some, you know, we're gonna do some trauma therapy and some dry needling and, you know, you name it, some mat technique, muscle activation technique. So part of that was the sharing economy. You know, what do I really need? I got an incredible minimalistic mindset. Everything I own is in a Jeep. I have 2 suitcases. One of it's podcast equipment. A little guy is clothes. I wear the same thing a lot. Now, I don't look shabby. I don't think I look shabby, but I don't have a lot of clothes. I don't have a big wardrobe. I don't need it. I have 2 pairs of shoes. You know, the majority of what's in my car are, you know, technology devices that I carry around with me just because I use them on myself sometimes, but I'll say, come over. Let's do an ionic foot bath and an amp coil. And then I'm going to use a tuning fork on your biofield, and we're going to calm down your nervous system. And people are like, wow, that's a thing? You have all this? I'm like, yeah. So that's my life, right? I really, really, really looked at all my debt. You know, I examined how, like, it's so hard to have love survive under debt. And that was a lesson I got from the household that I grew up in. You know, it was the 80s. You know, people were buying homes at like 18.7% mortgage rates. Crazy. And like credit cards were like, yeah, put it on a credit card. It was like a joke. I remember people joking about that. They're like, oh, my 4 credit cards are maxed out. Well, that was very triggering for me. And I was always worried that I was personally worried that if I got in a bad financial situation, that I wouldn't be in a successful relationship, yada, 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 yada. So I'm very aware not to spend beyond my means. And I spend my money on things that allow me to show up as a better human being. That's kind of my prime directive. And I have these written out, right? I'm like, does that help you to show up better as a human being? No, you've already got a pair of sneakers. Wait till they're rotten. Then you can get another pair. At least that's how I'm rolling for now. So I think there's a relationship with money that I see it stick people all the time. Because this is the thing, right? I run sales and marketing for Coil. So when somebody's struggling and they call me and they're interested in like moving forward, bringing this into their home, a device that's $79.95, it's just under $8,000. It's an investment. And not everybody can afford that. And that's real. But I have ideas on this. I have so many ideas. So let's look at the car you're driving. Do you drive a $40,000 car? Do you know? There's a guy I follow, Mr. Money Mustache. He has a rule: $10,000 car. You buy a used car. You can get a great car for 10 grand. You don't need a lease. You can drive that car for 10 years. So we might allocate funds from a car. We might switch out cars. How much are you paying for cable? What if we cut our cable bill as opposed to put the money but we kept paying ourselves into an interest-bearing account like Celsius Network, which gives 12.5% on a US-backed digital dollar. What if we did that for a year? Well, there's like $3,500 just there, and then the car. And then what if we did this side room as an Airbnb? What if you actually put your car on it's like Camel Economy or eToro or Toro, where you can actually rent your car like an Airbnb 3 times a week. They give you $40 a day. How attached are you to your car? So there's a million ways to have all this passive income, and so I can usually walk people how I can make you money by going through a program like this. And there's many, we can exponentially like step this up and up and up. What I'm really passionate about, and what I like to pitch this ball to the universe, whoever is listening to this podcast or whoever sees the update, I think because listen, when you're really down with a really serious illness, or you've got debilitating Lyme or mold toxicity, or you're going through cancer treatment and you can't work and you don't have the energy for these things, I see a real limitation with the billions of dollars pushed into disease awareness, cancer awareness. I think we're all aware of chronic illness. And I love the whole pink ribbon thing. But what I'd rather do is somebody smarter than me contact me, because I've got it all laid out. What if we were to set up a fund that allocated finances for people to upgrade their wellness that just came off the interest of the fund? So I know there's human beings out there. I know there's human beings that'll hear this that have more money than you know what to do with. You don't even need to give your money away. What if we were to set up a fund for a chronic illness? And people were just through their diagnosis, positive Lyme diagnosis, whatever it is, bedridden, can't work, on unemployment, that you could actually allocate a fund that worked off the interest of the investment. So all we did was borrow your money for 10 years. Don't give me money, but let's help some people that are down for the count. And a big portion of that, and I don't mean a handout, I mean it's education. Free classes, a free community class. I think we do this again through community. So I just think we're doing it wrong. I think fundraisers and donations, I think that's old paradigm. I think we're ready for a shift. And I think you see this model with some of these closed systems of value that are arising, like some of these digital currencies. So anyways, I think that's something that we can just set in the old incubator. And there's definitely a way to help everybody. We've learned from the pandemic, it's inclusion. I talk about all these high level technologies, pulse electromagnetic fields and frequencies and infrared sauna and incandescent bulbs are all great. But the reality is there's education that's not in practice today that tells you that grain cereals filled with glyphosate covered with, homogenized milk and steroids there's a belief system that still is a good breakfast. And that's huge. And that's the mass. So education, right? And I think it's got to be delivered in an entertaining way. So you got to edutain people. and make them really get on board and say, wow, that's fun. Wow, what if I felt better too? And then I can hang out with this person who's doing this edutaining. But we just got to look at the way we're delivering help to people, right? I don't think it's working. It tends to be very elitist, right? You're the person that can afford these things or you can't. And it's not the company developing the red lights or the sauna or whatever. That's not that has a real cost. They have a staff, they have employees, they have insurance, they have shipping. It's very expensive to put out a product, right? So I think we've just got to re-examine that. So if anybody wants ideas, you want to do a little consulting, reach out, freddiessetgo.com. And I'd love you to listen to the Beautifully Broken podcast, because I have guests all over. I had a guy on this week who's restored his vision from going blind. He's rebuilding cones. That is a genetic disease that they said could not be done. Peptides, lights, people are doing these miraculous things. The emotional component of the body. What is my body able to do through a belief system? So this is an awesome, awesome, awesome opportunity just to hear other heroes' journeys and hear about some of this tech. Yes.
You're amazing. Everyone's saying so in chat, by the way. So yeah, this has been so informative. I know we just have a few minutes left. And I love that you brought up the financial piece. And again, it all comes back to mindset, to the most powerful thing I think I've learned in the past several months is just reading about habit change. And it always comes back to this sense of identity and how powerful that is. Am I someone who identifies with and believes I cannot afford these things? Or am I someone who wants to step into a new paradigm shift and say, I believe I could afford these things. Maybe I just need to be smarter and more creative about this. So I agree with you, for whoever's listening and wants to invest in something that is such a phenomenal idea, paying it forward, allowing people to get access to these technologies. And it reminded me actually of a story of a gentleman who was bedridden, and I worked for a clinic prior who offered biohacking, and PEMF, pulse electromagnetic field therapy, was a part of it. And they gave him a machine. Someone bought it for him and was like, I know this will help him. And he went from being bedridden to less and less depressed, more and more energetic, and able to sit up in a wheelchair and just continually improving. And he had no life before that moment of someone gifting him that ability to let's try something different. Let's up level your energy because this other stuff just isn't working.
It's a paradigm shift. Totally. It's a paradigm shift and just a new level of understanding. And, I often say that there's so many cool things we could build. This doesn't have to be in your home. This is a community center. I would build this for the community. Each community could have a center like this. It could all be subsidized easily that people could go and just, because it's fun to do it together. It's pretty boring to do it alone.
Agreed. I posted the clickable link. It's Freddie Set Go, FREDDIE setgo.com. Please check him out. Amazing website. He's a coach. He's got the Beautifully Broken podcast. And I have his buyer's guide, by the way. Please get signed up for his newsletter list. It's amazing. And please also join our Health Accelerator challenges. So above and beyond these podcasts, we want to educate you every single week. Just we're talking about you were saying edutain. I like that. You every single week. It's fun. Excellent job, Freddie. You're amazing. I love you. Thank you for being here with us today. And please, everyone, join us same time next week, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Thursday for our Your Healthy Self podcast.